You have heard so far, if you are not a military connected person, a lot of acronyms. And just like in civilian victim services, which uses a lot of acronyms, the military has some acronyms of their own. And we're going to cover a few of them because a lot of those acronyms may be unfamiliar to those of you who do not work regularly in connection with military justice. So I'm going to put up on the screen some common acronyms that are used in connection with military justice systems and ask our presenters to talk a little bit about those acronyms and describe the different services offered by those who work in these different roles.
So the first acronym you see up there, first three, you have SAPR, SHARP, and FAP. SAPR is the DoD program, Sexual Assault Prevention and Response, and SHARP is specific to the Army. SHARP is Sexual Harassment, Assault Response, and Prevention because the Army determined years ago that the sexual harassment is the precursor behavior to sexual assault, and they wanted to pull sexual harassment out of the Equal Opportunity Office and put it in with the advocates for to be able to better identify these precursor behaviors. The next one up there you see is FAP, Family Advocacy Program. Family Advocacy is specifically for domestic violence. These are contractor advocates for the military. These are civilians that provide specific advocacy for survivors of domestic abuse and also for children who are sexually assaulted either at home or outside the home. The next one you see there is SARC, Sexual Assault Response Coordinator. A Sexual Assault Response Coordinator they are responsible for maintaining DSED. They are responsible for reporting directly to an 06 or higher level commander. That is in the Army and Air Force, it is a colonel, whereas in the Navy, we're talking about a captain. The SARC has oversight of multiple victim advocates. Typically, they will work hand in hand with a full-time victim advocate, and then they will have oversight of collateral duty victim advocates. Depending upon the service and the location will determine if and how many they have. There are also now going to be lead SARCs, and a lead SARC would have oversight of other SARCs. The VA, or victim advocate, that's what I primarily do, though I have been trained as a SARC and I also have served as a SARC in multiple occasions. The VA is the on the front lines, as we say in the military. They are with the service members on a regular basis. They are the ones who are expected to respond, provide services, do that immediate response, and be there with a survivor throughout their process. The next one you see is a prevention specialist. We don't currently have an acronym that is commonly used for that yet, but a prevention specialist is an individual who is trained in what behaviors, what training can we provide to service members that will help prevent incidents of sexual harassment and sexual assault, and what programs, advocacy, and outreach will actually benefit. We have the VWL, the Victim Witness Liaison. In my experience, a VWL most often works within a military courthouse. They are there to provide that liaison between a survivor and the process of going through a trial by court-martial. And it's just one more resource available to them on the legal advocacy side. You have the Special Victims Council or Victim Legal Council, SVC, VLC, it depends on the service. The Army, Air Force, and the National Guard use SVC. The Navy and Marines tend to use VLC. Victim Council is another term. All of those are the same thing. That is what Lieutenant Colonel Watson does. Behavioral health, in the Army, we call that BH. Behavioral health is your psychology, psychiatry, social workers, counselors. This is an absolutely invaluable resource for our survivors as they're progressing through their process. Medical, you can be looking at emergency and routine. The emergency can be the what we call a SAMFI or a FME, which is a forensic medical examiner, and they will conduct the forensic exams following a sexual assault on a survivor, also on the alleged offender, to look for evidence and provide that evidence to the law enforcement agencies. And then, of course, routine medical care. Anytime that a survivor goes through that forensic exam, they're going to do follow-ups. They will see their provider or a provider, doctor, nurse, PA, to be able to make sure that they didn't contract any STDs, and if they did, those are being treated, or any other ongoing medical issues. Pastoral care. This is a big one in the military, and a lot of people think of chaplains and they think that chaplains only provide religious counseling. But within the military, the chaplains do so much more, and that's because the chaplains have a level of confidentiality that is almost absolutely 100%. And so a survivor knows that when they go to a chaplain, nothing's being put into their medical records, nothing is being reported to the command. But if they do confess or confide in a chaplain that they have suicidal ideations, that chaplain is absolutely going to become their best friend until the chaplain knows that that survivor is receiving the medical care that they absolutely need. I know chaplains many times who will personally escort an individual with suicidal ideations to the emergency room and stay with them until they know that they are safe. Military One Source and DoD Safe Helpline, these are telephonic and online resources that are absolutely wonderful. I love providing these to my survivors because these allow survivors in remote locations, where I just came from in South Korea, to be able to receive counseling from licensed social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists in an online setting. And they actually have an app for the cell phone where they can go in there, they can keep track of their self-care, they have coloring books, and they can also participate in group counseling sessions, which may not always be available to someone. For example, if we have a service member on recruiting duty in a very rural environment, that may be the best way for that survivor to be able to access group counseling to help progress them to a thriving state. Did I miss any, Leah?
The caveat that I have is that these are all active duty programs. And when thinking about the National Guard, sometimes we have a different name for it, or sometimes it's only a resource available when a person is in an active duty status because of how the legislation or funding or both come down under Title 10, which is our active duty military. And so a big one that stands out for us is we don't have the family advocacy program in the active duty program, but otherwise these are all things that are available for all service members. And if you are working with a military connected service member, they have often been in multiple statuses, no matter whether they're reserve, guard, or active duty. And they're going to want to throw out some of these acronyms, and that's why it's so helpful to know what they are. But also don't forget, we are here, both the attorneys and the military victim advocates, to help you navigate this, and we want to assist you. So don't worry that you have to memorize this. You can always call the Judge Advocates organization. It goes by the acronym JA, and I like to jest. It really means just ask, and we're serious about it.
So I'm noticing a great comment in the chat about mandatory reporting obligations. And I know this may take some time for those who are not military connected to learn some of those ins and outs, but would you mind talking a little bit about mandatory reporters versus non-mandatory reporters in some of these roles?
Oh, yes. This is actually a really big one because within the military, policy actually changed within the last few years that changed who is a mandatory reporter and what does it actually mean when you are a mandatory reporter. Because under current policy through the DoD, a survivor of sexual assault can tell almost anyone that they were sexually assaulted, and it doesn't immediately initiate an investigation. The mandatory reporters currently is a service member's commander at any level, and basically they're in a command or leadership role over them. They would have a mandatory reporting responsibility, but that doesn't mean that the survivor has to participate with law enforcement. They can still decline participation, and this is one of those incidents where you have an independent investigation with a non-participatory victim. You also have the instance where a survivor victim tells law enforcement. Law enforcement are absolutely mandatory reporters 24/7, 365. And this has created quite the challenge for our military police personnel because they are now considered mandatory reporters all the time. And that means that they can't even confide in their friends who are also military police or security forces in the Air Force. But I know that policy change, of course, is happening because this has been a very large area, and people are working on changing that policy as well. Mandatory reporting is not like in the civilian sector. For example, when I was in San Antonio, if you are under the age of 18 under Texas state law, you must report. It is mandatory reporting for anyone under the age of 18. And that meant that if we had any service members, any soldiers that were sexually assaulted at the age of 17, and yes, we do get those service members that join the military early enough because they graduated early, got a GED, or they're doing what we call split operations, where they do basic training during their junior and senior year, and then they come and do their advanced training later. If they are under the age of 18 and they want to file a restricted report, we did not have the option to take them to receive a forensic exam at the civilian hospital. And that's where we can still allow them to have a restricted report, and we just have to keep all of their care through the military resources that are available on the military installations.